If I could go back, I'd never open that job application. I'd delete it, burn it, pretend curiosity never crept into my chest like smoke curling through a cracked window, because sometimes finding the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it chains you to something far worse. It started like this. My husband Darren began working late. At first, it was once a week, then twice. Before long, he was coming home at 10 p.m., sometimes later, always with a new excuse. Back-to-back meetings, last-minute presentations, a client dinner that ran long. I wanted to believe him. Really, I did. But I'm not stupid, and I'm definitely not blind. We'd been married for 5 years, long enough to know each other's tells. His were subtle. He started leaving his phone face down on the table, jumping when I walked into the room, washing his clothes separately, claiming his suits needed special care. The little things. The kind of details you only notice when your gut starts whispering that something's off. I asked questions, softly at first, then louder. "Who's Mia? I saw her name pop up on your screen last night." "She's on my team," he said. "Relax. It's work." "What kind of work text comes through at midnight?" He didn't answer, just stared at the wall like it held more answers than I ever could. I tried talking to my sister, Lindsay. She told me to hire a private investigator. "Or just leave him," she said. "You don't need proof to walk away." But that's the thing. I did. I needed to know. Because if I was going to lose my husband, I wanted to know exactly who or what I was losing him to. So I did something reckless. I polished my resume, made up a story about needing a change of pace, and applied to a position at Darren's company, Ellingson Blue Moore, a mid-sized marketing agency in downtown Raleigh. They were hiring for an assistant account coordinator, low-level, entry point, perfect, just close enough to see things without raising flags. I didn't tell Darren. I pretended I was still working remote, freelancing from home. I even created a fake client list in case he snooped. I spent 2 weeks rehearsing cover stories in front of the mirror, memorizing details I'd need to sound legitimate if I ran into him in the hallway. But that didn't happen, because Darren worked in strategy on the 11th floor. I was assigned to accounts on the 8th, 3 floors apart, whole worlds away, and yet not far enough. The first week, I kept my head down, learned everyone's names, took notes in meetings, smiled, nodded, waited. I didn't ask about Darren, didn't even mention I was married, just listened. It was Mia who first caught my eye, tall, sharp, with a smirk that looked painted on. She was loud, flirty, magnetic in a way that made you feel small just standing next to her. And she was everywhere. Meetings, emails, office gossip. Her name came up like clockwork. On my 3rd Friday, I stayed late to help with a pitch deck. Around 8 p.m., I wandered to the break room to get a soda. The office was mostly empty, the air humming with fluorescent light. That's when I saw them. Through the glass wall, 2 shadows moved in conference room B, Darren and Mia, standing close. Too close. She laughed and brushed something off his collar. Real cliché stuff. He didn't pull away, just looked at her the way he used to look at me, back when we were still us. I didn't confront him. Not that night. Instead, I stood there, heart in my throat, listening to the sound of something I couldn't name cracking open inside me. I thought I was prepared for the truth. But that wasn't the truth. Not yet. That came later, and it was so much worse. The thing about betrayal is, it rarely shows up all at once. It drips in slowly, moment by moment, detail by detail, until one day you're drowning in a flood you swore was just a leak. That weekend, I didn't say a word to Darren. I didn't bring up what I saw in conference room B. I played it cool, cooked breakfast, asked about his long week. He lied with such ease it almost impressed me. Mia's been pushing the team hard, he said, cutting into a pancake. She's got this new campaign that's been eating up everyone's time. I smiled, pretended to sip my coffee, and tried not to throw the whole mug at his face. I didn't want to lose him, not yet. I wanted the whole truth, the why. And deep down, some naive part of me still hoped I was wrong, that maybe, just maybe, there was another explanation, something that wouldn't leave our life in pieces. So I kept showing up to work. I observed. I waited. By week 4, I knew the rhythms. Darren and Mia always met on Tuesdays and Thursdays after 6 p.m., sometimes in the break room, sometimes in that same damn conference room. Once, I caught her fixing her lipstick in the mirror 5 minutes before heading upstairs. "She's sleeping with him," whispered Erica, a fellow assistant who'd grown friendly with me. Mia, Everyone knows it. She's been through 3 guys in the strategy department since January. Darren's just the latest. My stomach flipped. You're sure? I asked, trying to sound casual. Erica shrugged. You didn't hear it from me. Of course not. Nobody ever hears it from anyone. Gossip floats like smoke, and no one wants to admit they lit the match. That night, I followed them. I waited until 7:15, then took the elevator up to the 11th floor. The lights were low, most of the cubicles were empty, and there, in the glass-walled corner office, I saw them. He was seated on the edge of the desk. She stood between his knees, her hand on his chest, his lips just inches from hers. But they weren't kissing. They were arguing. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language said everything. She gestured wildly, then shoved him back. He stood up, angry. She grabbed her coat and stormed out past me without even noticing. I ducked behind a filing cabinet. Darren stayed behind, pacing. He looked more exhausted than I'd ever seen him, like something was eating him alive. He finally sat down and buried his head in his hands. That moment cracked something inside me, but it wasn't anger. It was confusion. If they were together, why did it look like they were falling apart? The next day, I decided I needed proof. Hard evidence. No more hiding in the shadows. If I was going to burn everything down, I needed the gasoline and the match. I waited until lunch, then slipped into the server room while the tech guy was out. I'd seen him enter the admin password 3 times by then. I was careful, calm. I told myself I'd just look, not touch anything. Just look. I pulled up Darren's email. I expected to find love notes, flirtatious exchanges, calendar invites for late-night meetings. Instead, I found something else entirely. A thread of emails between Darren, Mia, and someone named Glenn, someone from HR. They weren't about romance. They were about money, specifically a discrepancy in billing for one of their biggest clients, $173,000 unaccounted for, and Mia's name was all over it. My husband wasn't cheating. He was covering up something, possibly something illegal. And worse, he wasn't just involved. He was in way over his head. The more I read, the colder my hands got. There were dozens of emails, internal reports, spreadsheets, warning flags raised and quickly buried. Darren had been asking questions. Mia kept deflecting. And Glenn from HR? He sounded panicked. There were references to keeping it internal and not drawing attention until Q4 wraps. One subject line stopped my heart. Ray, whistleblower protocol, confidential. I opened it. It was from Darren to Glenn, dated 2 weeks prior. He asked if reporting Mia's behavior could be done anonymously. Said he had reason to believe she was fabricating campaign results, inflating budgets, and siphoning funds through a third-party vendor she'd recommended. He ended the email with a single line I'll never forget. If I'm right, I'm not just risking my job. I'm risking my marriage. I couldn't breathe. He wasn't cheating. He was protecting me. I logged off before anyone could see me. My legs were shaking so badly I nearly tripped leaving the room. I went to the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried for 15 minutes straight. Not the gentle cinematic kind of crying. Ugly heaving sobs that made me bite the sleeve of my sweater just to stay quiet. This wasn't what I expected. I thought I'd catch him in some office romance, maybe confront him, cry, scream, and leave. But this was deeper, more dangerous, and now I was part of it. I should have gone home. I should have come clean. But instead, I waited until the office emptied out again and went back to the server room. This time, I dug deeper. I found invoices, fake ones, all tied to a vendor called Brightline Consulting, supposedly based in Delaware. But the address listed didn't exist. I cross-checked it on my phone. Nothing. Then I made the mistake of opening a folder labeled Private Mia B. It contained a single file, an audio recording. I hit play. Her voice came through, clear as day. If he talks, I'll bury him. You think Darren's got a future in this industry? Once people find out he was in on it, I'll make sure he's radioactive. Another voice, male, Glenn, I think, mumbled something unintelligible. Then Mia again. I'm not going down for this. He knew what he signed up for. If he tries to play the hero now, I swear I'll drag him and his wife down with me. I backed out of the folder and closed everything. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about infidelity. It was about survival. Darren had been trying to keep me out of it all along. That's why he worked late. That's why he lied. He wasn't hiding an affair. He was hiding the fact that his entire career was balancing on a knife edge, and one wrong move could cut us both open. And now I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. That night, I didn't go home. I sat in my car in the parking garage until midnight, then drove to my sister's place and slept on her couch. I told her I had the flu. She didn't ask questions. The next morning, I called in sick, but Darren didn't. And by noon, the news broke. Mia Bennett, senior strategy lead at Ellingson Muir Moore, had been terminated after an internal audit exposed financial misconduct. The press release made it sound clean, like they caught her cooking the books and cut her loose. But I knew better. Someone had blown the whistle, and I knew exactly who. When I finally saw Darren that night, his face looked 10 years older. He walked in, dropped his bag by the door, and just stood there. "I was trying to protect you," he said softly. I nodded. "I know." We didn't talk much that night, just sat on the couch, side by side, in a silence that felt both heavy and strangely healing. But here's the thing. You don't go through something like that and come out the same. The truth didn't save our marriage. It scorched it. Because even though I knew he wasn't cheating, the lies still cut deep. The hiding, the silence, the nights I lay awake wondering if I wasn't enough. I couldn't just forget all that. Neither could he. Darren and I tried, for a while at least. We went to counseling. We started eating dinner at the same table again. We even took a weekend trip to Asheville like we used to, pretending we were still that couple who drank wine by the fire and talked about renovating the kitchen. But we weren't those people anymore. We were survivors of something we never signed up for. Not a crime ring, not some scandal on the 6 o'clock news, but a quieter kind of collapse. The emotional kind. The kind where trust doesn't break all at once. It just slowly rots beneath the surface until the floor gives out. 3 months after Mia was fired, Darren submitted his resignation. They offered to move him to another department, sweep it all under the rug. He said no. Said he couldn't keep working in a place where every hallway reminded him of what he had to do to keep his life from falling apart. Funny thing is, I quit the next week too. I told myself it was solidarity, that I was supporting him, stepping away from the mess. But the truth, I couldn't stand walking past that conference room every morning, remembering how close I came to destroying everything over something I didn't even understand. We moved out of the city 2 months later, rented a small house in Chapel Hill, quiet neighborhood, decent backyard. Darren got a job at a nonprofit doing community outreach. I took freelance gigs, enough to keep busy. From the outside, it probably looked like a fresh start, but inside, we were different, quieter, heavier. There were days we didn't talk much, nights when I caught him staring at the ceiling like he was still living in that email thread. And me? I couldn't shake the guilt, not for spying or lying, but for how badly I needed to know, even if it meant breaking everything in the process. Because that's what no one tells you. Curiosity isn't harmless. Sometimes it claws its way into your marriage, your home, your mind, and by the time you get the answers you thought you needed, there's nothing left to protect. One night, about a year later, we were cleaning out the garage, found an old box from our first apartment, photos, ticket stubs, a crumpled wedding invitation. I sat on the floor and started crying. Not loud, just quietly, like my body finally admitted it was done holding everything in. Darren sat beside me, didn't say anything for a long time. Then he asked, "Do you think we could have made it if you never took that job?" I wiped my face, thought about it. "I don't know," I said, "but I think we broke either way." We separated 6 months later. No drama, no screaming, just a quiet conversation over coffee and a hug that lingered too long. We still text sometimes, birthdays, holidays. He sent me a picture of his new dog last week. I sent back a smiley face. And that's it. That's how the truth ended us. Not with a bang, but with a slow, unraveling silence. So if you're reading this, and you're tempted to dig into something because your gut says something's wrong, just be sure you're ready for what happens if you find more than you bargained for, because I went looking for an affair and found something that changed me forever.